Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Getting lubed up for the holiday, Tom.
Yeah, for Pissmas!
Pissmas! Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody!
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
Pissmas.
Pissmas!
Oh, and we just watched Spirited.
Spirited.
For Pissmas. The Pissmas film.
It's a Pissmas miracle.
Yeah. Oh, shit. That's going to be with me for a while.
On a bitter, cold Christmas Eve, one dark soul is selected for redemption by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come. A tradition that continues to this very night.
Like a Christmas Carol?
Yes, if you would just let me get this out. Sit.
So out of all the people on the planet, murderers, people who do gender reveal parties, I'm the guy you're gonna haunt.
You know what? Forget it.
All right. Well, before we get started, big old sloppy thank you to Harris and Millie.
Thanks.
Harris and Millie as our Patreon producers who, for whatever reason, asked us to watch the, I want to say 2002 Spirited. This feels very 2002.
2022.
That's what I meant. 2022 Spirited.
Spirited.
Starring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds and Octavia Spencer, from the director of Daddy's Home 1 and 2, writer-director of Daddy's Home 1 and 2, and Dumb and Dumber 2. This is a Christmas movie.
It's got real all of those movies energy.
It does. It's a reimagining of A Christmas Carol, the Charles Dickens story, that is also most of the time a musical. I say that because it feels like it forgets at some points, and then other points it feels like it's the opposite of forgets. I don't know if people saw this. It's on Apple TV. I don't know if it had a theatrical run or what.
It had a limited theatrical run and a bit of a buzz at the end of last year.
It has decent reviews. So thank you, Harrison Millie. We will now begin to talk about this film. Mm-hmm. It has decent reviews, but when I looked into it, it was one of those Rotten Tomatoes deals where it got a lot of like 2 out of 5s, and they're like, that counts as a positive.
Yeah.
And so it's it is.
Now that we're done thanking Harrison Millie, we can tell them to go to hell because this movie sucks.
I tried to be really nice about this.
This movie sucks so hard. Like I was shocked at how much this movie sucked, Dave.
I'm so glad you're saying this because I didn't want to be that mean, but it does
like
suck.
Aggressively
This movie
sucks.
It is, for one, 2 hours and 7 minutes, and you might notice that's too long for a comedy musical. Yeah. Here's my big headline.
My big headline.
My big headline. Interesting premise. Made with what seemed like good intentions, very badly made and executed.
It feels like I'm not saying this like in earnest, but this movie feels like it was written by AI in the worst possible way. I don't think it actually was, but this is one of the most unfocused movies I've ever seen.
It is all right. So structurally, it's one of the craziest films.
Yeah, it's
ever.
Nuts. It's like they mashed 2 movies together. There's 2 storylines happening at the same time. They have 2 main characters, Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. The movie switches between them right at any moment, like you're just switching between Sonic or Tails while you're playing Sega. you never spend long enough with either one of them to learn what any of their wants are. We're just sort of told this, so like nothing.
Yes,
it's so
big part.
Yeah, so you never like anytime any story starts getting any momentum, it switches to the other character, and the movie does this for the entire time. It's really weird.
It feels like it was very executive driven.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a movie that Jenna and Tracy Jordan would be in, which is funny because Tracy Morgan is in it. It feels like a 30 Rock gag because it's like we're going to do a hip twist on A Christmas Carol. And right away I'm like, well, Scrooge did that. And I liked Scrooge was kind of the best version.
A lot of movies do this, and that's fine. Yeah. It's fine. At this point, it really is like it is a big eye roll, like to do like a meta version or like a hip reimagining of A Christmas Carol, and this movie does 17 of them all at once.
Yes. Again, I do think so. I'll start with the compliments because they're short.
Sure.
One, I do think this was made by someone who wanted to make a fun Christmas movie with good intentions.
Yeah.
Meaning that they thought they were making a very fun film. Like the ending sequence is the crew and the cast all doing a sing-along, right? Mm-hmm. Like a big victory lap, which I was like, you didn't earn this, but
there's so many victory laps this movie. Every single moment, huge swelling emotional moment in this film is completely unearned.
Yes. 100%. Well, you briefly mentioned that, the characters, like there's songs where they're like, so this is what we learned. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's not what you learned at all.
You mentioned the very end song when it's the big musical number where it's the cast and crew all singing and stuff. And they say, we find out that it's not about being good or bad, but somewhere in between. I'm like, did we learn that?
Yeah. You did
no
not.
one ever vocalized that.
No. There's a lot of that. My other compliment is I do like the idea, and they didn't originate this. I'm sure other people did it better. I like that every time it goes into a song sequence, it kind of turns into a stage performance in the lighting and even the setting. It feels like they even swap to a stage sometimes. And I just thought that was well done. I thought the musical sequences were ambitious in a way. Mm-hmm. Like I said, very few compliments. I like Octavia Spencer. I like that she's the love interest in this. I feel like she doesn't get that.
The Bob Cratchit and the love interest.
Right, which it feels like a studio note, right? Like, what if the Bob Cratchit was also the love interest? It's like, what are we doing? What are we making? Well, and her role is terrible, but I like her.
Yeah, that's great. I like the basic idea. I like the idea of it's a Christmas Carol situation, but the person the Scrooge they're trying to flip is so corrupt and such a dick. He starts making the ghosts question their work, question their lives. That's a funny idea.
It's a funny idea. I also like the general idea of actually exploring the black and white morality that might be in of not really of A Christmas Carol, and I want to talk about that, but the idea of taking A Christmas Carol and then flipping it on the ghosts in a way to make them reassess how morality works. That broad premise, I think, is good. I don't think they do it in this, and I think their morality is really...
They don't at all. It's like 2 sentences at the very end.
Their morality is really skewed and weird. I would call it embarrassingly centrist at times, and we'll get into that. And then it tries to be meta in a way that's very grating. There's a few good jokes, I thought, but generally speaking, I also like Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. Good combo.
Yeah. Everybody's doing a great job. That's I can't.
Absolutely.
That has to be said. This is
everyone but the script.
A big production. So the singing and the dancing, all the musical numbers look great. Everybody's killing it. The dances are fun.
The songs are fine.
Yeah, the songs are fine. There's not any great ones, but they're also not bad.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah, they all feel like they're kind of, it's like Family Guy songs where it's all feel like kind of parodies of other songs.
Yeah, real basic, but not bad. So that's nice when it's not terrible.
I like the Good Afternoon song if it weren't also indicative of one of the problems with the humor, which is like they'll say a joke and then they'll like take a bow. So like Judi Dench shows up and then they stop and go, look, we have Judi Dench. And it's like, just have her show up. And the gag in that was the idea that back in the day of Scrooge saying good afternoon was like the most offensive thing you could say.
Right. It's like telling somebody to go fuck themselves to death.
Yeah. And they do a bit where he says it to like a kid and someone, they're like, you can't say that to a kid. And you understand the joke, right? They don't explain it. And then they stop and explain it. And I was like, you didn't, like you did the joke. You don't have to then stop and explain it. And then they do a whole song.
And then they do like a 4-minute song about it. And then it's like a repeated joke throughout the rest of the movie.
Right. And it was like, that was a funny joke that then you drove into the ground.
Here's the biggest note I have. It's also the first note I have because it's one of the first. Yeah. It's one of the first scenes in the film, and it's the biggest. I think it perfectly encapsulates the movie. But I guess we should quickly describe what it is.
Yes, I have so many different little threads that I want to pull on, but yeah, it's so it's like Scrooged in that it's a like reimagining and modern. So it's about the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and yet to come. And they're run by a guy who dresses like Scrooge, which we learn isn't Scrooge, who is supposed to be
Jacob Marley. He's literally Jacob Marley.
Right, which didn't make sense because Jacob Marley is specific to Scrooge's life because the idea is they're running it like a business where they're just doing it to every one person a year. And it's this very like the Santa Claus movie. Like it's one of those bits that you kind of know where you're like, yeah, I get it. Where it's like, what if this magical story was actually its own industry and business and they did it every time and they treat it like this, like, you know, Monsters Inc. or R.I.P.D., you know?
I mean, yeah, you hit it on the head with Santa Claus. Like, but all those those are all other Men in Black. And that, I mean, that's a good that we have so many touchstones. Like already.
Yes.
This is an extremely dated idea, and like all of the humor in this is dated. Like this movie feels 15 years old.
It does.
But sorry, Continue with your plot summary.
Oh yeah, but you're right. After that first sequence, I felt like I knew the entire film, and I was correct. And so basically, it's what if A Christmas Carol is from the point of view of the Ghost of Christmas Present. And so it's Will Ferrell as the Ghost of Christmas Present, who, spoilers, we later learn is in fact Ebenezer Scrooge.
He's literally Scrooge
in the afterlife. The idea is when you die, you get to do this. And that's again R.I.P.D. style.
Just pause real quick. That's like the 5th of 8 totally insane things that this movie does.
It makes so many offers. I wrote, like, at 90 minutes in, they do something that either should be the last thing that happens or the inciting incident. And they do it at 90 minutes in. It keeps changing what the movie is. Yeah. Because it keeps, like,
almost
wanting
on
to
a
do multiple things.
scene basis.
Yes. So basically,
that's what I meant earlier by, I think, feels like it's written by AI. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, it's Nightmare Before Christmas theme where they're like, okay, we got to prep for next year. They just finish out this year convincing a lady who's a bad neighbor to be a better neighbor. And they hone in
the
on
only part of the movie that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
We see the very end of them haunting Rose Byrne into being a better person. And that it's like a 4 or 5 minute sequence, and it's the best part of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically, Will Ferrell has been doing this for a while. They're talking like, you should retire. And what they say, and I wanted to establish this, retiring is reincarnation. That's what they say it is. And I only point that out because that's not what it is. But so they're like, you need to retire, you know, take another shot at life. And we hear his kind of inner turmoil, which is like, but what if I'm bad again? So I'm like, okay, got it. This is our main character. They hone in on Ryan Reynolds, who is a consultant, and I desperately want to talk about that. But they basically decide they say his file he is deemed irredeemable or unredeemable.
Unredeemable, which fucking drove me nuts.
Unredeemable. And so he takes him on as a challenge because Will Ferrell just really wants to get this guy, and then they start doing it on him. And then for some reason that's never explained, Octavia Spencer can see Will Ferrell. Do they ever explain that?
Nope.
No, they don't explain a lot of things, and I definitely want to talk about that because they'll do meta jokes like, "Oh, why is this dumb?" and then they'll keep going. And so Will Ferrell starts having a romantic relationship with Octavia Spencer.
Yeah, he starts having rom-com scenes with Octavia Spencer in the middle of this Scrooge movie.
Right, and I was like, oh, this is the movie? So Ryan Reynolds is like a side character, but they want to have their cake and eat it too. So they also want to do a buddy comedy where basically Will Ferrell start doing the thing on Ryan Reynolds, which doesn't make sense because the first ghost that's supposed to be the one that personally knows him is what's his name, the guy from Scrooge. And again, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so Jacob Marley just barely shows up to everyone.
Right, and it's like that doesn't make any sense anymore. They should have made Will Ferrell Ryan Reynolds' old mentor or something like that, and made him be the Jacob Marley.
Or make him all three ghosts.
Yeah, something. And so basically, then it's what you said, where the script gets flipped. Ryan Reynolds is such a smooth talker that he basically throws them all off. And what I found to be a very sexist thing, the Ghost of Christmas Past can't do her job because she's too attracted to him. And I was like, that's weird. That's a weird.
Right.
I know they didn't mean it that way.
She just immediately fucks him and then has to tag Will Ferrell in.
Yeah, which was a very weird idea. And then at the end,
it could have been funny.
But it wasn't.
Like there's a version of that that's really funny.
Yeah.
It's a musical. Sucking off the Ghost of Christmas Future. Like there's a version of that you could make work, but like it wasn't this. It wasn't what they did.
They break into song,
it's
and
weird
then they're very
that it's
meta.
In this like kind of family-ish movie too. Anyway,
it is very weird. They break into song and they're very meta about it. They have like multiple cameras who are annoyed about breaking into song. And basically,
several times, like more than once, meaning in more than one of the musical numbers, a character will point out, "Are we singing? What's going on? What's happening?"
Yeah, and it's like, I got it the first time. Got the show the first time. And so basically, Will Ferrell. I'm yada-yadding it because I want to get into the deets. Yeah. Will Ferrell changes Ryan Reynolds, and then also Will Ferrell at 90 minutes becomes a human. He takes the retirement, which is the thing they're setting up as like, I don't know if you kind of assumed that would happen at the end.
Yeah,
he would go because he gets presented with a magic watch, and the idea is you retire, you take the watch,
right,
and
like
then you
all dogs
reincarnate.
Go to heaven.
But because they wrote it so badly. They gave him the
all dogs go to heaven watch, Dave.
Yes, they did. You're right.
So he could go back to Earth and be alive again.
Right, but I can't stress this enough. Even though they literally they show him saying like maybe in his beginning song he's like, I'll be reincarnated, then maybe I'll grow up and meet a woman and we'll get married and have kids, right? And he literally says like grow up and become, meet a young woman.
Yeah.
When he takes the watch, he just wakes up as Will Ferrell, which goes against everything they had established.
Next to Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, and the reason why is because they wanted him. Again, it was a producer note. Like I guarantee, a producer was like, "You need to have him a romantic interest throughout this." And for whatever reason, the obvious thing to do is give it to Ryan Reynolds, which they still do. They do too, but that's the obvious thing to do. But instead, they give it because I think it was one of those things where they went through so many drafts and they kept adding things in that at one point they should have started over. They should have said, "Okay,
Maybe.
Here are the core things we need."
Maybe.
But it feels like it's a Frankenstein where they kept adding these fucking parts to it. And so Will Ferrell basically marries Octavia Spencer. And so that's why he gets reincarnated in his own body, because otherwise that romantic, like that, those seeds they planted wouldn't have gone anywhere, right? But it goes against everything in the movie. And basically he convinces Ryan Reynolds not to do a shitty thing. And then Will Ferrell almost gets hit by a bus, and Ryan Reynolds jumps and saves Will Ferrell and dies himself. And he becomes the new Ghost of Christmas Present in the afterlife. Will Ferrell... They basically trade places, and Will Ferrell has a family, and it's happy, even though he's like 60. And so it's like a little too late to have kids, but whatever. Yeah. So it's a fucking mess.
Not if you have Will Ferrell money. Yeah, it's so weird. Okay,
yeah,
so
I have so many little things I want to talk about, but yeah, you start.
So I had said my first note is my biggest note, and it's also about one of the first scenes in the movie. It's probably the third or fourth scene. It's after we've seen them redeem Roseburn, and they have the introductory musical number explaining what they do. This is Christmas Inc. or whatever they call it, and it's to see we haunt people, one person a year, and save them. And then Will Ferrell walks into a room to have a quiet moment to himself, and it's this big room. It kind of looks like the pause screen from Fable 3, if that reference makes sense to you. But it's just, it's full of all these statues. They're statues of all the people that he's redeemed over the years. And then this character, Margot, who is basically like a stage director of the different scenes they do when they're trying to redeem people, walks into the statue room to just basically start berating him about how he's a big loser. She just comes in to berate him with exposition and background about his character out of nowhere.
Yeah, how he needs to retire, basically.
It's like, don't you ever want to be human? Man, I miss being human so much. I used to get so drunk with my girls down in Tampa. You should miss being human. You should want to be human again. Don't you miss being human? You haven't had sex in like 200 years. We have no idea why she's mad at him. But she basically, she walks into the room while Will Ferrell is having like a quiet moment of proud, like content reflection of all the goodies. Like he's literally in a trophy room of all of his good work. Like every single statue is his good deeds. And then this character Margot walks in and puts the idea of wanting to be human again in his head. Like she incepts him with that idea. And then she says, anyway, I'm not wasting any more time talking to you. There's a party going on, you know. And then Will Ferrell says, like, but you started this conversation. And it's supposed to be a joke, but that's literally what happened. Like this person walked into the room with absolutely no agenda and nothing to say to Will Ferrell. This character just walked in to deliver this piece of dialogue and implant his want into his head for us, and then left the room. And the filmmakers were so lazy about that not only did they not even come up with a reason for her to walk into that room to speak to him, but they actually made a joke out of it.
And they do this several times. But here's the kicker of that.
But that's
what then happens.
Just real quick, that's them telling us what our main character wants. That's like essentially the inciting incident. This is the movie telling us this is our main character. This is what his goal is. This is his dream, is to become human again. This is how they tell us that.
Right.
Sorry.
And here's the thing. To add on to that, what happens immediately after that is he does a song about his wants and needs.
Yeah.
So you literally don't even need that.
They do that so many times.
Yes, there's a movie that I think has a direct comparison to this, Nightmare Before Christmas. Because Nightmare Before Christmas begins with a musical number celebrating another Halloween. We take Jack Skellington, who you then sighs and you realize he's in a rut, and he sings about how he's in a rut.
And then he sings Jack's Lament, which tells you everything you need to fucking know.
They do that, except they have this long scene in between the two where a character basically does all the work of the same song.
Right, and it's this
all they needed to do is have them be like
Apatow improv scene. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's awful. And it's very weird. And it's not so one of the things I asked right away, because we learned that the first person they redeem. So like the story of A Christmas Carol, I think it's a good time to talk about. Christmas Carol is about a man who is in charge of a whole town, basically, right? A very wealthy man who can make and break the people in this town.
He's not in charge of the town. He's a moneylender. But he's a big part of the town. Yeah, he has the power to make or break a lot of people's lives.
Right, and a moneylender is seen as a very, crooked job, right? I assume when Dickens wrote it,
it's predatory.
It's a predatory. So the idea is taking one of the worst of the worst, and the story, and I mean, this is my interpretation. The story of A Christmas Carol is almost about this person, this terrible person who is in control of a lot of lives, being confronted with the absolute truth, the stark truth of their life, and having to face that truth and having to repent, right? Whether or not you agree with the morality of it. And so when you tell a modern version, you had Bill Murray in Scrooged was a lighter version, right? But the idea is he's owns this big media corporation. Yeah. He's an asshole. He treats his media.
But all those elements are still in there.
For sure, yes. And they show in his personal life, his immediate personal life, he's shitty to, he doesn't, his family doesn't call
he's
them.
He's shitty, he's selfish, it hits all the emotional beats to earn the redemption arc that the Christmas Carol is.
So I want to talk about who Ryan Reynolds is, because
I'd love to, because I have no fucking clue.
Yeah. Immediately I thought, ooh, pharma executive? That'd be a good one. Like someone, what's an irredeemable? There's so many things that you could have chosen.
Right, because you're right. Just to hit that again, like the whole, every element of Scrooge is just like piling on the idea, like this is the worst of the worst. Like he's a moneylender. He's like 1,000 years old, so he's at the end of his life, so he has no reason to change. Like you're trying to figure out who's the modern day parallel of just the worst, most irredeemable type of scum you could think of in the modern world.
A pharma guy, a crooked politician. There's a lot to choose.
There's a lot you could come up with that we would all be like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but probably a few fucking generals around the world.
Yeah,
could get Christmas caroled. Right.
What they go with is a political consultant, and what they show
not even a political is like a media consultant.
No, a media consultant, and they're doing the first scene. So this is the scene to introduce. Look at how bad this guy is, right?
Yes, I'm glad you wrote that down.
It is a speech in front of a convention of Christmas tree growers, right? And what he gets up on stage and he says, "You can't afford me, but if you hire me, I will run a media campaign about how plastic trees are bad, and I will point to the plastic tree industry as being terrible, and you got to embrace that hate for the plastic trees." And Will Ferrell gloms onto him because he is, quote, divisive. He literally says, look at the division he's causing. And the division that they chose to do is natural tree growers being, quote unquote, mad and causing division with plastic trees. They later cut to Jimmy Fallon trying to be this like wise comedian. Like, can you believe this? People are mad at plastic trees. The thing is, plastic trees are objectively bad for the environment. They are objectively worse than natural trees. There is not that we've known this for a while. There is not and don't get me wrong, if you buy a plastic tree, I don't give a shit, right? But they're the ones who chose this. And that blew me away, because that is one where there's like an actual side to that, which is like, if you can get a natural tree, they're better for the environment. Plastic trees cause all this waste.
Right. It was supposed to be like a star-bellied Sneetches thing, right? Or the idea is like there truly is no difference here.
Right.
Just, I am creating the division in your minds.
Right. And in this world of, again, pharmaceutical giants and war criminals and stuff, they chose a guy for his irredeemable. Again, he was unredeemable. He has been labeled unredeemable because he's divisive.
We see,
and that is the most wise centrist horseshit I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's real, like leaning back in the chair and tenting your fingers, like you're like checkmate.
They're like, look how divisive he is. He makes people get mad at things. And that was, to me, what was one of the wildest things. And then later, they actually give him a line where Ryan Reynolds says, "You chose me out of all the people? You didn't choose any racists or whatever." And basically, they make a meta joke out of it where they essentially just tell him to shut up. And then they never answer that question. Like, they never say, "Oh, this is why." So the movie knows. The movie knows
right,
that stuff.
Because they make a point out of when we learn that Will Ferrell is Ebenezer Scrooge and he was the only unredeemable person to ever come through the program, and that's why he chose Ryan Reynolds, because he's unredeemable and he's like the only other unredeemable person since. And it's like, really,
right?
Really, this guy. And it's the first scene we see of him that's supposed to introduce, because they're there about to run a haunt on a different person, a person who owns a hotel chain.
Right, which again, so low level. Right. So low level.
But Will Ferrell runs afoul of Ryan Reynolds and sees this convention where he's talking to natural tree farmers, and just even at a base level, like ignoring the fact that it's like an actual issue with an actual like demonstrable side that is like correct, because like, yeah, plastic trees are terrible for the environment. Like, it's just ignoring that. It's just a very, very basic advertising strategy is to point at the other product and be like, the other product is inferior to our product. It's very basic.
It's so
and this
basic.
Like we see, just real quick, we see Ryan Reynolds do like worse things later, but like this is the scene that they chose to introduce us to the idea like this guy is so bad that it made Will Ferrell, yes, you were saying unredeemable. It made Will Ferrell abandon the current haunt they were on and be like, no, Jacob Marley, we gotta haunt this guy because he's the worst of the worst. He's unredeemable.
It's so toothless because it's like
it really is.
It's like that meme of like I drew the Hamburglar with teeth, a little peek into my twisted mind. It's that where it's like it's so like, oh really, this was the worst you can think of? That's so adorable. And then again he points it out and they basically go like, yeah, that's funny, and then they go on and it's like, okay, so you could have chosen a worse person and you don't give a reason why. And so what they wanted, again, cake and eat it too, because some producer was like, yeah, but do we have to dislike the Scrooge character? Like that, that was one of the conversations where they're like, yeah, but I don't want to dislike him. And it's like, that's the whole point. But okay, yeah, we'll make him more sympathetic. Like that's what it felt like.
And they never give us anything. Like they switch back and forth so often, and yeah, like you said, they're like so afraid, I guess, of giving Ryan Reynolds anything more than just being kind of a prick to people. Yes, that like we're not invested in his redemption whatsoever.
The second thing they show is that he causes division, and then his niece contacts him. His Octavia Spencer, which is like his assistant, is like, your niece wants to have a meeting today or wants to meet. And he's like, did she get the gifts I sent her? And they're like, yeah. And then he goes like, well, okay, I'll have a meeting. So if you want to show that they're an asshole to your family, don't show them make time for them. Again, look at Scrooge. The whole point of Scrooged is he doesn't make time for his family, right?
Well, you look at who's the character. Who is this character supposed to be? It's Fred in A Christmas Carol. And what's that relationship? Fred is poor. Scrooge doesn't talk to him because he married a poor woman, and Scrooge didn't approve of the union, but Fred got married anyway because he was in love. And so all we see is Fred being super, super nice to Scrooge and trying to get him to come over for Christmas, and Scrooge just being a relentless, unforgivable piece of shit to him. Like, that's what this character is in the original story. So to take that and to make it so much more tame than what was in a story that was written like over 150 fucking years ago, I think. Maybe not that long ago, but like over 100 years ago. It's a fucking weird decision.
It really is, because they're making him so like, it's like, oh yeah, he's kind of a dick, but he's not a monster. And here's the thing. Like we talked about, the moral of the ending seems to be that there is no absolute, or that, again, they just have to say it, that like it's incremental changes. So what they could have done in this moment is, if we saw this all from Ryan Reynolds' perspective, and you could be like, oh yeah, he's kind of a dick, but he's trying. And then he got visited by these like absolutist moral ghosts. Then we would see that, right? Like that's the point. The point would to be like, oh wow, these ghosts are overreacting. Like, yeah, he's a dick, but like if that was the point, but since the perspective starts as those ghosts and they're like, ooh, let's look at this. Like, you never get that feeling that that's what they're leading towards, because it's so unfocused in how it's telling the story.
Yeah, it doesn't get to, like, it takes the movie like 45 minutes to get to, okay, it's Will Ferrell taking Ryan Reynolds to A Christmas Carol. Like, that's how long it takes to get to Will Ferrell is now showing Ryan Reynolds his past.
Yes. Structurally, this is out of its mind, and we haven't even,
Well, I'm just adding to like how unfocused it is. It's like the movie can't
it really is.
It cannot decide what it's about. And then the idea that like the incremental change is a good idea, but like we mentioned, nobody brings it up until like the very end of the movie. And rather than have that be even if that was the first time they brought it up, they could have at least like maybe kind of walked away from the landing if they had the conclusion of Ryan Reynolds' character story been like, we see him implement that incremental change because he realized, oh, what I told my niece to do was really shitty and it could have caused some really terrible consequences.
Yes.
I should be more thoughtful. Like, I should be less careless with how I treat people and how I treat the world. And then maybe we see that little seed of change grow into it become incremental, and then he gradually becomes a better person, and maybe that's what you wanted the movie to be about. But what happens instead is he immediately fucking dies and then just goes and has an awesome life as a ghost with his cool ghost wife. And he just says,
I want to I want to talk about this. I want to explain for people. So one, the yet to come moment, the at your grave, oh my God, the Tiny Tim of it all, is that he does have a meeting with his niece. Again, his niece, like, to show how bad he is, he actually meets with his niece. His niece is like, I want to win student president. And he's like, oh, I'll dig up some dirt on your opponent and we'll run with that and we'll have you post it. But again, he's trying to help, but in a bad way, obviously. And so he digs up this thing of this like kid saying, you homeless people or whatever, while he's serving homeless people at a shelter. They do a very straw man thing where basically they do a straw man cancel culture. They say cancel, which again, very centrist bullshit, where he in the future, he encourages his niece to quote unquote cancel this kid, which is, again, it's a straw man argument. So like, it isn't good that she does it, for the record. And she posts him saying this thing in 6th grade about homeless people. And then we see that the kid kills himself. It's the most like egregious straw man version of like cancel culture is wrong.
Ripped from the headlines, after school special, Lifetime original movie version of it. For sure.
Right. And I can't stress enough they say cancel. They're like, she's canceling him.
Not that that's not a thing that not that it's not a thing that happened, right? Obviously.
Yeah, I just have to point out.
Anyway,
this director made Daddy's Home too.
Yeah, it's like, of course, this is a thing that
stars
happens.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah, but it's so like heavy-handed and the most extreme version of it in this goofball centrist ass movie.
Yeah, sorry. This director also did Horrible Bosses too. So he's done two actors who left Hollywood because of horrible things.
He's put a lot of good into this world.
Yeah, but he's very invested in wanting to say how bad cancel culture is because two of his movies were directly affected. And so it just feels
a little boy might off himself.
It feels real grimy
in this story that I invented.
Yeah, his Scrooge is someone who cancels people, and so okay. So he's like, he sees the error of his ways. He runs to tell his niece not to post this thing. And then he slips on the ice because it's a skating rink. She puts away his phone. He's like, no, you canceled it.
He stopped from doing this, and the niece decides to do it without him.
Yes, that's what I wanted to get to. He doesn't do the thing.
No.
So he doesn't make the change.
He doesn't have his redemptive moment.
No. And then Will Ferrell is like, well, we did it. Let's celebrate, because Will Ferrell is now a human at this point. And he basically goes like, you don't understand. Like, I'm not a better person. Yeah, I'm going to feel guilty for a few days, but I'll get over it. I know how to justify these things. And he walks away. And so this is supposed to be like, there's like 6 endings. It's like Return of the King. And so you're like, oh, okay. So
somehow it felt longer. It felt longer than Return of the King.
It felt longer. So it's like, oh, it's sad because he didn't fix himself. And this is when Will Ferrell chases him, and he gets almost hit by a bus, and Ryan Reynolds pushes him, and then they freeze time, and they're like, you did it. You actually did make the big moral choice. It was saving Will Ferrell all along. It wasn't your niece. It was this. Then they sing a song about how morality isn't absolute and it's incremental steps.
Pause.
Right?
I just want to pause real quick just to underline the fact.
Like the movie pauses, yeah.
Yeah, like the movie pauses, just to underline the fact that Ryan Reynolds' character, his big redemptive moment, his big realization was having the base level humanity of being unwilling to watch another human being die.
Yes.
That was
correct.
his big redemptive moment of having the base level shred of decency.
Yep. So they
to
do
try
this song.
to try to save his friend's life.
Yeah. So they do this song where they I remember the lines, "I have spent Christmas Day obsessed with wrong and right" from Will Ferrell, and then he says, "Maybe there's no magic wand, maybe there's no switch to flip." So they're talking about the idea that morality isn't like a big aha moment, which is a good idea.
Sure.
Except they haven't shown any of it.
Except none of the rest of the movie was about that.
None of the movie. And
this
they're
idea is
celebrating
never
that he
brought
saved
up
him from a
once
bus.
before this point.
Right.
Sorry.
And so, well, no, it's fine. And so that's the big moral is, okay, it's, and again, nothing has shown that. And then the song stops and Ryan Reynolds is killed by the bus. And then he realizes he's a ghost and he's talking to the other ghosts and he says, "Wait, sucks. Like, I don't want to die." And he says to him, "It's not a selfless act unless there's consequences."
Right, your sacrifice doesn't mean anything if there's no consequences.
Right. So it keeps just yo-yoing the moral, right? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because they're saying there's no switch to flip, there's no big gesture. And then they're like, "But you made a big gesture." And that's the sacrifice. So it's like, is there or isn't there, right? And then they're saying, well, it has to have consequences. What are those consequences? He gets to work the Will Ferrell job with his sister, with the woman he loves, and regularly visit the
Will
real
Ferrell
world.
and his family just forever, for eternity. He gets to live forever in this situation.
So there are no consequences.
There were no consequences. In fact, his life got better.
Yes, his life did not change and in fact got better. And so
You know what's really fucking funny is that they don't show him go down and visit his goddamn niece.
They don't. It is very
Nobody
funny.
gives a shit about that kid.
That
Like,
would show that he
kid,
had
it was
perhaps an arc.
So obvious. It's like such just like a prop, that fucking character.
Yeah. And then they take a big fucking victory lap like they taught us a lesson.
So much singing and dancing. God, I hated this movie.
It's bad.
It is bad.
All right,
It was
I'm going to
really
get... I have one more thing that's real nitpicky.
Okay.
They present it. All right, so they want to do this meta idea like Santa Claus, right?
Mm-hmm.
They show that they have like people building sets when they're getting ready to haunt Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, it's a cute
and
idea.
they have like you mentioned there's a stage director and stuff. Well, which is it? Because then they take him through magical flashbacks with people who look exactly like him and his family. Are those people in costumes? They literally do bits where they'll have someone drag a prop in, like a stagehand, and then he'll be like, "Let me show you this," and then he'll snap his fingers and it'll magically go to another area. So which is it? Is it something that people are physically dragging props around and creating sets, or is it magic? Which one is it, movie? Because you try to do both. And that kind of, to me, sums up the whole movie, which is trying to have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
They want it to be magic, but they also like this joke. So they do both.
They wanted to do a movie about the Ghost of Christmas Past, and they also wanted to do a movie about Ryan Reynolds. So
they do both.
They did both movies.
They wanted to have Will Ferrell want to reincarnate, but they also wanted to have him have this relationship. So they do both. They have him reincarnate as his grown self, even though, and that's the whole movie, right? It's the same with the morals. They want this moral where it's like, oh, it's incremental, but they want the big aha moment.
Yeah,
too.
They need the big, grand, emotional moments because it's a Christmas Carol.
Right. So the whole movie, as we're saying, feels like two movies that they crammed together. And that's why also the pacing, as we mentioned, Will Ferrell sings this big song 90 minutes in, takes the watch, and then gets turned into a human, and we get a series of "Look, I'm human" bits. And I was like, this is a first act bit. Like, this is the inciting incident of a different movie.
Yeah.
A ghost has become human, and now he has to deal, like Elf, you know? But they do this like quick, and then they have like him on Octavia Spencer doing
Speaking
dates.
of which, the Elf reference where he goes to the Christmas party and there's somebody in an elf costume and he like yells at them for like 20 seconds about how stupid their costume
so much
is.
of that, yeah.
Like, yeah, we got it. We see it.
We get it.
We see that it's an elf costume.
There's so much of them staring right in the camera and going, "Did you get that? Did you get that joke? Did you get the joke?
It's so.
Do you want us to do the joke
it's
again?
So low effort.
It is one of the laziest.
It's so low
movies.
effort that that's that first scene that I talked about, where it's Will Ferrell's "Part of Your World" moment. It's like he sings his "Part of Your World" song, where he sings about what it is he wants, his character's motivation. His motivation happens because a character walks into the room for no reason to tell him that he should want to be reincarnated again, and then walks out.
Right. Yeah,
and they point out the fact that she had nothing to say, no reason to walk in, and that she started the conversation for out of nowhere, out of the blue. They point it out within the movie. They make a joke about it.
To put the humor in perspective, Jimmy Fallon's in this twice as a comedic character. As a character,
like, as the voice of reason, yeah.
Look how funny Jimmy Fallon is.
The wry jester speaking truth to power.
Exactly. It's real bleak. Like, I don't like Jurassic World, but one of my favorite uses of Jimmy Fallon is in it, which is that he's on the tour doing like the video for it, which is not a good idea. It really dates that movie, but they make it so that the kids are not they're not laughing and they are not entertained by him.
Yeah, they think
and
he
that
sucks.
was like, that was great. Yeah. That was a great use of Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon. I want to go back to the hotel.
Yeah. On top of all this, I want to just point out that it also, because they're doing all this stuff, I also felt like, much like how they're using magic and then set decorators, the ghosts are themselves, we talked about the irredeemable thing. There's also like...
Unredeemable, Dave.
Unredeemable, sorry. There's like the first haunting. He shows up and he's like starts singing a song, and Ryan Reynolds interrupts me and just goes, "Excuse me." And the ghost like stops and he's like, "Did you say excuse me?" And then he like leaves the haunt and he's like, "This guy's impossible." And it was like, really? That's all it took. Like, there's something also to the fact of how toothless the ghosts are. Like, they say he's unredeemable because he doesn't think people can change. And I was like, that's all it takes to be unredeemable?
Right.
Like, that's
through all
fucking
of time?
And he throws a wrench in their haunt so incredibly easy. All he does is go like, "Hey, wait a second now," and like stop.
He kind of makes fun of it. He makes fun of him a little bit, and it completely deflates their whole operation.
Right. And so if that was the point, that would be good. But they don't really, because they're sticking so much crap to this. You can't really tell what they thought. Like, it really does feel to me that it went through 8 drafts.
Well, and I have no idea how they wanted me to feel about it. Like, am I supposed to think Ryan Reynolds is Bugs Bunny? Am I supposed to think it's cool and kind of funny that he's mucking with the works? Or am I supposed to be mad at him? Is he like being a piece of shit?
And again, the Ghost of Christmas Past immediately just is like, he's so cute and can't do her job. And then at the end, they're a couple, and it was like, that was not earned at all. But they make them so incredibly easy to manipulate, which again, if that was the point, but it's so unfocused that you can't tell what they originally wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea of a Ghost of Christmas Past. Like I like the idea that, because they say they do it every year. So if it was like, oh, we're doing it again, and it's the first time since Scrooge, and then the realization is like, wow, things are so modern and different and we can't keep up, that would be an observation, right? But they do it every year, so it's not like they're unaware of how the world works.
Right, it's a weird...
They're gods.
Yeah.
They should have the upper hand at all times. They can bring you into your past and show your worst memories and expose them and show you the future. So the idea that they're naive is really like, it doesn't groove well with the idea that they're also gods. You can't do both.
No part of this movie fits together.
No, it's all a bunch of gags that they thought were funny and they crammed together into one movie, and then they went, ta-da! It is a deeply frustrating movie.
It's a real piece of shit.
Yeah, that I can't stress enough is over 2 hours long.
Mm-hmm. And you feel every
hours.
minute of it.
Every minute. So when I watched it, we were going to record a different podcast, and you texted me, and he's like, I can record. And I was just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to stop. Like, I walked away from this film
I need to take a step back from this movie.
And it was a little better. Like, I literally wrote the note, okay, I'm less mad now. And then like 5 minutes later, I was like, it's still terrible. It's going. It's
not
fucking
moving
mess.
any faster.
Why were the gravestones
really
futuristic?
I have no idea.
That was so dumb.
Was he buried on Mars?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what was happening.
How far in the future was he supposed to have died?
It really does feel like,
It looked like
you know
Alan
what it feels
Tudyk's
like?
grave in Serenity.
You know what I just realized it feels like?
What's that?
It feels like the version of Christmas Carol that Bill Murray is putting on in Scrooged. Where he's like, let's have hot dancers in it. Let's put this in it. Let's make it jazzy. Let's make it fun. Like, that's what it is, right? It's an executive, a soulless executive, telling the story and then mucking it up because he wants to make more money and wants to make it more appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what it is, which is very funny to me. They have a line at one point where they go, that's the other thing. They recognize that a Christmas Carol exists. They do a meta moment where he goes like, what, like the Christmas Carol? And he says, he like rolls his eyes and goes like, another Christmas Carol story.
He's literally
and it's like,
Jacob Marley and Scrooge.
Right, and it's like, so what the fuck does that mean for the world?
I don't know.
What does that mean? That Charles Dickens based that off a true story?
Right. Is Charles Dickens a sorcerer?
Right, or is it like...
Is he Dr. fucking Strange?
Yeah, what is happening? And then again, they roll their eyes and he says, it's like Scrooged or all the other adaptations nobody asked for. And it was one of those moments where like, are you insulting Scrooged in your shitty Christmas Carol movie? Like, that is considered one of the best adaptations. And you're like, psh, that's nothing. Check this out. And it was like, what are you doing? Like, I think they thought they were insulting themselves, but like, they lumped it in with Scrooged.
Yeah, no, I think it was self-deprecating. You know, it's like, we're another Christmas Carol, but it's like, yeah,
you sure are,
and you're less intense than, like I said, pointing out that his relationship with his niece is 100% more tame than the original relationship in the story.
Right.
Than even the analogous relationship in Scrooge when he asked with his brother. He's terrible to his brother.
Yeah, you know what's a better way of making that meta joke? Have the character put on a cheap, shitty TV special of A Christmas Carol, like in Scrooge. Like, that's how Scrooge did it. They made fun of themselves too by having the character be doing that, but they didn't have someone roll their eyes and go, geez, another Scrooge movie.
And he didn't get visited by fucking Jacob Marley. He got visited by somebody from his own life.
His old fucking
who
mentor.
was in the Jacob Marley role. Yeah.
Right. That's we talked about this. Will Ferrell they make him fill in for the Ghost of Christmas Past because she has the hots for him too much that she literally can't do his job.
Yeah, because they fucked too hard.
Right. And so, like, you look at Scrooge, they use that as an opportunity to have, like, really good character actors and comedians come in and play those roles, right? And it was fun. Mm-hmm. This doesn't do that. It's just Will Ferrell, and then death as Tracy Morgan, but he doesn't have a big part. It's just, come the fuck on. Come the fuck on,
it's, like, really whack. Like...
Right.
It's very, very low effort, very lazy. It's I don't want to talk about this anymore, Dave. I'm done talking about this movie.
Yeah, I have more little notes, but you're right. It's sorry. The Good Afternoon song, I just have to point out, they have this where we're laughing and having beer. This unearned, like, they're friends now, and then the Good Afternoon song is because Will Ferrell can't stick up for himself. Did you get that? At any point before that?
No.
Like, they do a song about how, like, you have to tell people to fuck off, but, like, they never show, like, that's a good arc. Scrooge, who's reformed, is now too nice. His problem is he lets people walk all over him. That would have been a good arc, but that's one more, like, thread that's just sort of half there. Fuck.
It's not there until a character appears and tells Will Ferrell it's there.
Yeah, yeah.
And now the thread's there. Now we're singing about it.
What a mess.
It sucks so hard. I hate it, Dave.
Okay, yeah.
It should be boiled in its own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through its heart.
Absolutely. Do that. Everybody do that. Certainly don't watch this. Harrison Millie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's what I'll legitimately say. I'm glad I watched this because it's fascinating. It entertained me by being fascinating.
It really is. Like, man.
Yeah. And it gave me a good, like, okay, never do that again. Check. Never, like,
It's a shame.
Not to make a movie.
A lot of effort went into this pile of wet laundry.
Again, I feel like they had good intentions.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
I just think they don't have the right morals.
Yeah,
like I don't think the people who wrote
completely toothless and had nothing to say and nothing to add.
Yeah,
it had less to say than Charles Dickens did fucking 100 years ago.
Right. They wanted to make a positive Christmas movie, but they didn't. I just don't think they're smart enough or clever enough to do that. And I don't think their moral compass was good enough. I think
it's just
all
badly.
of those things.
It's badly made. It's very badly made.
Yes. And it has great cast. Great cast.
Amazing cast. Doing great work.
Yeah.
And the singing and dancing is wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah, it really the ending where they showed them all dancing and singing, and they even show the crew.
Yeah.
I felt so bad because I was like, oh no, they're proud.
This is a lot of effort going into just a real dog shit.
Yeah, they're like, look what we did, and I'm like, man,
yeah,
look what you did.
A real macaroni painting.
Yeah,
like nobody. I guess I'm gonna put this on the fridge because you worked hard on it, but like, God, it's awful. It kind of smells weird.
I'm gonna put it on the fridge for as long as I need to.
Yeah, until your back is turned. That's exactly as long as I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie sucks, Dave. Let's be done.
All right. Well, thanks again. And listen, this was through our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there for just $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of exclusive podcasts. Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, Spiel Boys. We do custom. We just watch episodes like this, or we watch movies every Friday night. We do that on our Discord server, which has a lovely community. We will be doing it for... I forget when this comes out. Well, we're going to take a little break for the holidays, but we'll have a lot of podcasts coming out and shit, so you probably won't notice, but you should absolutely check that out. We watched the Librarian series.
We did.
Now that's a movie.
Yeah,
now, that's a movie.
Those are some pictures, man. That's storytelling.
Yeah.
We also have a store. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com. You can find a link to our Teespring store, where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your Scroogey little peepers onto that.
Yep.
Yeah. Watch Spirited a bunch.
Yeah. Watch it until you go numb. Until you go numb and you have no morality and you can be the monster that you wish you could be.
Until your skin is cold.
Yeah.
Until you can
Happy
see in the dark.
Go to it right now.